between the American media and both Democrats like Clinton and Republicans like Bush to hide the truth from the American public just does not bear reality. Israel's an open society. Any newspaper can come and cover it. Why would not the newspapers cover these stories? Well, for one reason, they are figments of Chomsky's imagination.
Well, then,
and they're just never happened. Now, I want to talk about another figment of his imagination. Chomsky constantly quotes
right.
Benny Morris as if Benny Morris supports his position. What happened is Benny Morris was asked whether or not I accurately quote him in my book, The Case for Peace, and Benny Morris responded as follows. He still holds the views that I attributed to him, that I am right about his views, and that someone could read Morris's books, this is a quote from Morris, and arrive at exactly the same conclusions. And yet, Professor Chomsky, by selectively quoting and by picking tidbits out of context, knowing that you're not going to check up on him, tells you essentially that what you believe in the American media, whether it be the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, or the New York Times, is not true. In order to get the true meaning of the world, you have to move to Planet Chomsky, where the news reflects his perspective on reality. Well, I urge you to move to the real world. Read the real news. Don't read the selective Israeli journalists that he talks about. Listen to Dennis Ross. Dennis Ross actually helped to draw the maps.
Professor
He
Dershowitz.
was there. When I have to finish, I haven't done my 2 minutes. When he said, when I asked Dennis Ross at lunch today about these maps and what apparently Chomsky would say in response, Ross said, ask Professor Chomsky one thing. Were you there? Dennis Ross was there. He knows what maps were presented to the Palestinians and what they rejected.
Thank you.
The head of the Shimon Peres Peace Center, Ron Pundak, who's the leading scholar on this and doesn't cut it off
you quote
right before he's refuted, the way Dennis Ross did, presents he was involved in negotiations since before Oslo, right through Camp David up to the present. Got a long historical account of it. You can read it if you can read Hebrew. Some of it's in English. All this smoke that was blown had to do with one fact that I mentioned, one. And you can check it, and please do. In the first month of the Intifada, I'm now using Israeli sources, 74 Palestinians were killed, 4 Jews in the occupied territories. The first few days, this is reported in the press here, Boston Globe, Israel was using U.S. helicopters to attack apartment complexes. Clinton reacted with the biggest deal in a decade. Check it out. It's in the public record, not questioned by anyone, to send military helicopters to Israel. There has been a database search of the U.S. It was reported in Europe. It was reported by Amnesty International. It's reported in Jane's Defense Weekly, the main military magazine in the world. There was a database search of the U.S. press, and they found nothing. I know of explicit cases, and I'll be glad to tell them to you, where the press was approached and asked just to report the facts.
Why didn't they? Chomsky, why didn't they report it? Are they bad reporters? What's their motive? Explain why the Times or the Post wouldn't report this great story from Planet Chomsky.
Gentlemen, if I could...
From Jane's Defense Weekly, from the international press, and so on. Yeah, they wouldn't. You have to ask them why they didn't report it. I'll give you my opinion. In fact, I've written about it.
Given that the JFK Forum is here for the purpose of creating educated citizens and participants in a very important debate, I would ask each of you to exercise a bit of restraint so that we can have more of our questions from the audience, please, and identify yourself.
Yeah, Nancy Murray, and if you want the answer, why didn't they report it? See Peace Propaganda and the Promised Land. Now, my question, getting back to today, and your functional contiguity.
Yep.
I would like to know, have you seen not just the wall, but the 8 terminals that are being built? Under your vision, under your compromise, will the terminals be dismantled? Will the wall be dismantled? will Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, be under the sovereignty of Palestinians, not just under their control? And will the Palestinians have their water resources back? Will they have freedom of movement? I mean, is this the kind of vision you have? Is it a genuine one, or are you talking about Sharon's plan
Well, I can only
for
tell you
a
what-
so-called Palestinian
I can only tell
state?
you what my proposal is, and I think it's a proposal that's today widely supported within Israel. That is that the ultimate security fence, I've been through not only the terminals, but the most recent terminal, the most recent high-tech terminal that was just built. I proposed actually that the security fence be placed on wheels and constantly be able to be moved consistent with Israeli security needs. The Israeli Supreme Court ruled last year, and Chomsky misstated it, no Israeli justice has ever said, and I challenge you to find a statement that Barak has ever said that Israeli law trumps international law. That is simply not true. What he said is that Israeli law enforces international law, but international law is not determined by a body, the International Court of Justice, which excludes Israelis from serving on it, and which will not allow an Israeli ever to be a member of that court. It would be as if a Southern black in the 1930s accepted as the correct statement of American constitutional law a decision by an all-white court in a case involving a black and a white man. No, Israel accepts international law, enforces international law, and the goal, of course, of my peace proposal is that the security fence will eventually be dismantled when terrorism ends, but before that, it would be on the border, the way the Gaza fence is